So the order was given to the SS to hurry men to Alsace. Among the first to arrive there in the spring of 1941 was a certain Joseph Kramer.
He was a big man, very manly looking, dark-haired, with this big square chin. And you could see he was someone who was physically very sure of himself.
An admirer of Hitler and fanatic about Himmler, he'd been recruited to the SS in 1932. He'd been out of work at the time, unable to provide for his family, a situation the Reich was good at exploiting.
The Nazis were very cunning, because obviously if you give a job to someone who otherwise would be rather lost, that person will be all the more motivated.
He felt like a real man at last because, at last, he had a framework. He had the impression he was useful, and suddenly his life had a name to it.
Dachau, Mauthausen, Auschwitz. Kramer passed through a lot of camps and was trained by some fearsome SS chiefs.
When Kramer got to Natzweiler, he already had years of experience of the concentration camps behind him. And he was going to make his mark on this one.
For over a year and a half, he would oversee the laying of roads and the construction of the camp. Little by little, the camp took shape. Upstairs at the inn became the offices, the pleasant main house, the commandant's quarters, and on the ancient pastures, they built terraces to break the slope. And on each of those terraces, they built a block, one of them a prison, another a cremation oven. All around, a double row of electrified barbed wire fences 3 meters high. The whole of it surveyed by 8 watchtowers with views designed for perfect aim. Finally, a few barracks were built for the guards along the road leading up to the camp. In 1942, the whole area for kilometers around was made a restricted zone.
So the whole area was restricted to prevent anyone finding out just what a concentration camp really was.
Anyone who entered this restricted zone would be under threat of death, and everybody knew it.
At the head of his little concentration camp empire, Kramer made sure the arriving deportees got the message straight away.
The commandant, he was a right bastard, Joseph Kramer.
Ernst Sillem is 94. He's one of the 2 last Dutch survivors of Struthof. He spent 14 months there. When he arrived at the Roto train station just below the camp, a conversation he heard between the commandant and a guard left him in no doubt.
The first chap said, "There's one of them we really have to get rid of." And the other replied, "Don't worry, they're all going to be done in."
In another convoy, this one from Paris, was Jean Villeray. An equally frightening welcome awaited this 19-year-old member of the resistance.
As soon as we stepped out, all the yelling and the orders began. Schnell and all that. I didn't even know what it meant.
In the village, all the shutters were closed.
On the way up, I saw a woman crossing herself and another one crying. I was thinking, well, it's certainly not a holiday camp here, that's for sure.
The majority of the detainees were political opponents or young resistance members from all over Europe. They didn't know where they were or what was going to happen to them. But the men, or rather the phantoms, that they saw as they approached the camp chilled them. You can see it in this drawing one deportee did when the guards weren't looking.
That came as a very serious shock to them because they understood that those people were the image of what they'd be in a few months, or at any rate what the SS wanted them to be.
I never knew, never even imagined you could treat human beings that way.
Within hours, the deportees would be thrown into the total inhumanity that Kramer and his subordinates were orchestrating. The first big shock came right there at the entrance. They were all required to strip naked. The Nazis scrupulously noted down all their belongings to make them believe they might one day be able to leave.
Then they shaved you completely from head to toe. Not a single hair left. Then they take you into the next room, the shower room.
It all happened very quickly. As the minutes went by, it got more and more difficult to differentiate between all these naked bodies. And that was just what the Nazis wanted.
The ritual that the SS had come up with was really designed to break these people who'd been lawyers, tradesmen, citizens. It meant the SS weren't dealing with individuals anymore, just a mass.
To make that mass even more anonymous, the SS made the new arrivals all put on a striped uniform or old mismatched clothes. These would be their only protection against the cold.
They gave us clothes. You had to stand on tiptoe if you wanted to get big enough sizes that weren't too small for you. You just had to wear what you were given.
And finally, they gave everyone a number. 74 years later, Jean Villeray still remembers his.
I'm number 19410. These are things that you don't forget. It's a terrifying moment, being given a number. From that moment on, you were no longer a man, you were what they called a Stück.
A Stück, just a thing. Joseph Kramer wasn't the only one running this great grinding machine. He'd handpicked the most servile SS henchmen to do his dirty work.
These were men with no scruples. They were inhuman. They were bastards to everyone. They didn't know how to be good or kind. They didn't know the meaning of kindness.
Particularly Wolfgang Süß. The prisoners all called him the Creature. He was at the very heart of all the terror. There, cut off from the outside world, he could give free rein to his sadism.
People have testified to scenes of unimaginable brutality. People beaten to death, savaged by dogs, lying in puddles as guards urinated on them. Just atrocious things.
Torture was something that, where physical abuse was considered entirely normal to get people to obey.
As well as the SS, deportees had the kapos to deal with too. Prisoners who'd been promoted to oversee and keep an eye on their fellow inmates, and who had the power of life and death over them. Kramer had chosen them from among the first arrivals. It was a particularly cruel system.
This kapos system was incredibly perverse, but very representative of the Nazi way of thinking. Because by turning some of the deportees into SS collaborators, they effectively turned them into torturers.
Torturers who made survival at the camp completely arbitrary, day after day, and night after night. For at Struthof, the days were an unbroken chain of suffering with one sole objective: to break both body and soul. Every day the men were woken at dawn and sent off to forced labor. The quarry was only a kilometer away, Under escort, the deportees all climbed the hill to that vein of pink granite that was so dear to the Reich. For 10 long hours, they would quarry the stone out of the rocks with nothing more than a pick and a shovel.
It was hell. People got hurt. There were lots of accidents. There aren't any better ways of showing your power over people than having them break up stones without even knowing why they're doing it.
Especially when those men are completely unprepared for such work. Just months before he was arrested for trying to flee to England, Ernst Selim was an agronomy student living a comfortable life with his parents and family. Natzweiler came as quite a shock.
It was especially hard on your hands, because you had to pick out the rocks with your bare hands, and they were sharp. You had to chuck them into the cart, into the trolleys there. There was a rock that fell on these chaps who were digging under it. One of them died straight away. 2 others died later. There were broken legs. It was right next to us.
They often had to work in conditions that would shorten their life, so there wasn't any thought for their working conditions at all. It was all about just exploiting their labor on the spot.
And never mind if it did turn out to be poor quality granite. The point of the camp was to work deportees to death. So the SS found another way to do that. A new activity. They had workshops built on the quarry where they had the inmates dismantling and repairing airplane engines all day for the German Air Force.
We were slaves. It was well-organized slavery.
They were worn out and exhausted, but their daily grind was far from over. For twice a day, they still had to face the ordeal of the roll call. Out on the terraces in front of the blocks, they had to stay on their feet till the Nazis had finished counting them.
You're tired, it's raining, it's snowing, you're cold, you're hungry, and you have to stand there without moving, without talking. The roll call was endless.
You just hoped the head count would be successful and no one missing, because then they'd leave us standing there all night, if needs be, till they found the last missing man.
Some just dropped during roll call. Their stomachs were empty or they were just too weak. They were beaten till they stood up or they were left there to die, but the head count had to be done.
For the SS, it was the occasion to make announcements to the assembled inmates.
For the SS, it was a marvelous stage to put on their show of power and of domination, as well as to assert themselves over the inmates.
When you take a whip and crack it in someone's face, so it leaves a scar, you're not only attacking that person's face and their very humanity, but you're also branding them in the same way a farmer brands a herd of cattle.
One evening, because he'd tried to get away from the drudgery, Ernst Selim was beaten up.
That's when I was beaten up, out cold. And when I came around, I had no idea who I was, who anybody was. My memory had gone completely from being knocked out.
The other inmates just had to stand by and watch.
We were watching, thinking it could be us. That's why you had to be very careful. You had to be alert all the time. Really, we had nothing at all. Our hands were tied.
The next day, Ernst was put back to work, despite all the pain and exhaustion he was feeling. The more time went by there on the mountain, the more their bodies grew weak.